Es war ein König in Thule, gar treu bis an das Grab.
Hi, what's going on? This is Patrick Jaguar with the Cosmic Alchemist YouTube channel. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for all the likes, comments, shares, subscribes, views. I appreciate you. If you're not yet a subscriber, I ask you to consider doing so. Every time I upload or I live stream, you'll get a notification. So let's get into this. So this is my June 2023 astrology video. So I'm going to talk about what the movements and the alignments of the planets with the fixed stars, the sun signs, the lunar mansions. I'm going to talk about what all that symbolizes. Because again, like I often talk about, we, via our unconscious minds, we project these planets, these stars are projections of our unconscious minds. We actually manifest them. Now, they are actual physical bodies. Here in the 3D, they're actually physical bodies of rock and gas and, plasma and whatever the hell. They do have a physical nature to them, but then they are also higher dimensional beings, just like we are. So, we are projecting all of these bodies into the heavens because they are all inside of us, and they're a map of our internal forces within our minds. So I'm going to talk about what this means, because these celestial alignments tell us what is going on within our own consciousness, individually and collectively. So really cool month here in June. There's going to be some drama. For sure. There's been a lot of drama. I think, and it's no surprise, we're into the summer. We started the summer back in early May. We're going to be at midsummer on the 21st of June. And so we're into the summer. It's probably going to be kind of a hot, kind of, for some, very tiresome summer. We're going to see some violence, around the world. That doesn't take an astrologer to tell you. We've got the attempted Nazi invasion of Russia for the second time. NATO has always been a puppet of the Nazis, since the beginning of the Cold War. The Nazis created the Cold War. I'll make another video about that. But NATO's intelligence during the Cold War, they were all former Nazis, and they were feeding the U.S. and its NATO underlings a bunch of bullshit. Totally exaggerated Soviet Union's military capabilities and their intent to use those capabilities. We got played for fools like usual. But I'm not like bashing Americans, but we are naive. Americans have, and it started back in colonial times. We have a tendency to just forget the old world, because, when you look at the prevailing culture in America, it's basically English. And it's Protestant, so it's WASP, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, right? In the British Isles back in the 1600s and 1700s, the 17th and 18th centuries, there are hundreds of offenses that were punishable by hanging. And those sentences were commutable to transportation to the New World. So basically, instead of hanging you in England, they would send you to Virginia, the Carolinas, New England. And you were an indentured servant. You had to work without pay for 7 years. So people wanted to forget about that whole world back in England. And they did this very successfully. So the majority of Americans have no sense of history. And, once you had Hollywood come along, it's like Americans wanted to believe that they were wholesome and the world was just perfectly wholesome. So, it was like a self-imposed innocence and naivete. So as a group, as a culture, we get played for fools very easily. So yeah, that totally happened. So yeah, so anyway, with the violence, this Ukraine war, it's the Nazis trying to invade and conquer Russia again. So there's that violence. There's gonna be drama here in America. There's always something brewing. There are all these little indicators popping off of the economy is about to, go down the tubes. Um, I think it'll bounce back later this year, but there's going to be some drama. Prices of shit are always going up. Food, fuel, services, merchandise, and people are getting pretty angry about that. And then, there are all these shootings around the United States here just in time for people in Congress to be calling for more gun control, and it's funny how that works. And there's just always something. So and we've got Mars in Cancer for the month, so it's like Mars gets cranky and pissed off and doesn't know how to how to express itself and find a constructive outlet. Because Cancer's the emotions. Mars doesn't like dealing with the emotions. It's kind of like a PTSD warrior. It's all fucked up on its emotions and it doesn't know how to deal with it. So there's all that going on. I think people are hyping. They're definitely hyping this because internet astrologers, they like sensationalism and hype because people buy their shit, right? I'd make more money if I got into that game. But that's not who I am, right? So we've got that going on, and this month we've got huge portals opening up to take us wherever we intend, really, because we started them. I'm making this on June 4th. I've been all kinds of busy. There's been all kinds of drama and work drama popping off, and just shit to do. I went in YouTube jail for 7 days. But yeah. So June 1st, we started the month with, Rahu, aka Dragon's Head, aka Loki, conjunct with Jupiter. So that's basically a giant interdimensional portal opening. Now, it's all about your intent. If you want to grow, if you want to become yourself, if you want to live, your best life, pardon the cliche, common expression, but if you want to live your best life and be your real self and not just, be who you're told and do what you're told and, copy your friends and family and neighbors. If you want to be the real you, that dimensional portal is going to take that's going to be a higher dimensional portal. It's going to take you towards your best life. It's going to take you towards a higher dimension. If you want to be afraid of your own shadow and just like afraid of everything, and you want to have your Armageddon end of the world fantasy, you will find your way to some living hell eventually. Now, it's not going to happen overnight. This portal is going to take us to where we're going to go in the next 10 years. Within the next, in 10 years, you're not going to recognize the world. All the institutions we take for granted right now, especially the ones that, dominate our lives, like finance, government, education, they're going to have some wake-up calls, and a lot of institutions are going to collapse. I think even things like customer service are going to fall apart within the next several years. But it's certainly possible to thrive, and that's going to depend on what you expect from life, because what you expect from life is going to determine what actions you take. So if you're committed to freaking out about the Elon Musk Neuralink and about the needlecraft and about digital currencies and all that shit, central bank digital currencies and nuclear wars and zombie apocalypse. If you're committed to freaking out about all that shit, you'll find your way to some sort of living hell. You will make sure you get there. And that's actually easier for for most people. That's a lot easier than actually having to live your life without the approval of your parents and your family and your friends and neighbors. It's a lot easier than understanding who you really are and what you really want out of life and going for it. It's easier to have the, Christian apocalypse with the sword coming out of Jesus's mouth and fucking Satan doing a dance on the earth and all that shit. People are addicted to that drama. So, what do you want? That's what it comes down to here. So that Rahu-Jupiter conjunction's a big-ass deal. And before I go any further in this video, I read sidereal astrology. That's visible sky astrology. Mainstream astrology is what we call tropical astrology. It's disconnected from the actual visible sky. It's not what you see if you look up in the sky. So if my placement of fixed stars and planets within the sun sign sounds wrong, well, it's because I'm using a different zodiac. All right. So, and some other things too, we are going to have to deal with some deep unconscious issues, especially, this full moon, June 3rd, which is what? Yeah, it's tonight. Yeah, I think it's like 11:30 tonight. 11:42 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, so East Coast of America. This can be an intense full moon. I'll get more nitty gritty later, but it's 19 degrees, sidereal Scorpio. That's in the lunar mansion of Jeshta, which is the most batshit crazy lunar mansion. Western name's Parka. So yeah, most batshit crazy paranoid. Even kind of like vengeful, narcissistic part of Scorpio. So it can bring a lot of issues out of the woodwork. That's a biggie. We've got a Uranus-Mercury conjunction tomorrow on Sunday the 4th. And that's like Mercury and then its higher octave Uranus conjuncting 26 degrees Aries, lunar mansions of it's Hades, god of the underworld. That is going to basically to be a catalyst to help us to see ourselves, because Aries, for all of us, it's yourself, it's what goes on in your head, it's your identity. So to see ourselves differently, when you see yourself differently, you live life differently, you see the world differently. It's interesting too, we have Mars will be parallel with Uranus for, if I did this right, and so when planets are parallel, that means that they're the same height above the horizon. Conjunctions mean that they are, at the same point, sort of east and west, longitudinally along the horizon. But parallel deals with declination, and declination is height above the horizon. So usually when planets are conjunct, they're at different heights above the horizon, but Mars and Uranus are going to be parallel. They're going to be different signs, different degrees. They're actually going to square. They're going to be at same degree, different signs, but they're going to be parallel at the same height for a few days. That hasn't happened since about Christmas time, Boxing Day, December 26th, 2004. That was the big Indian Ocean tsunami. The nodes, Rahu and Ketu, are also in the same signs, very close to the same degrees, like 2 degrees away from where they were on December 26, 2004, when the big Indian Ocean tsunami happened. Something like 350,000 people died. I'm not saying that's going to happen. There will be some natural disasters most likely this month, but especially around that time, around mid-month, but much smaller. The thing about the early 2000s was That was a mega death time because Pluto was in Scorpio, and that's like mega death all day long. We're not having that. Again, Saturn is watching out for us. And that's a big thing to bear in mind here. Saturn is watching out. Saturn deals with public service, public servants, who are underdogs, who are advocates for the underdogs, who are advocates for, we the people. So that's a big deal. And so we have a very powerful planetary god, Saturn, watching out for us. And really, Saturn is the one who's going to keep the past from reoccurring. So even though Uranus, it's making a return to where it was on September 1st, 1939, on September 1st, 2023. Now, why is that important? September 1st, 1939 was when World War II started, when the Third Reich invaded Poland. But back then, Saturn was not in a position to help. Saturn this time around will actually be looking at Uranus when it comes back to that point. So Saturn was looking at Rahu and Jupiter when they came together, when they conjuncted fully on the 1st of June. So Saturn's watching us. So, Saturn and Jupiter also, Rahu and Jupiter also conjuncted and opened one of these portals back in May of 1929, which set the stage for the financial collapses in October 1929 and the Great Depression and the New Deal, which was really a screw job that made it necessary for World War II to happen so that the bankers could be paid back for the money they lent so the New Deal could be possible. We're not going to have a financial Ponzi scheme and a world war like that in the United Nations, which is just safeguards the interests of big business. We're not going to have all that again because Saturn's protecting us. So that's a very good thing. So hooray for Saturn. And then too, we're going to have a new moon on the 17th. It's going to be conjunct. It's going to be sidereal Gemini, 2 degrees. On the day Saturn goes retrograde, a retrograding Saturn goes back and reviews things. Makes us get things straight, makes us correct our thinking, makes us correct our mistakes. So Saturn on that day of that new moon will retrograde from 13 degrees Aquarius, sidereal, all the way back to, let me see, get some notes here. 6 degrees Aquarius by November. So it's going, for a second time within a few months, it's going to go back, it's going to retrograde, so it's going to make contact for a second time with America's natal moon, which is in the 3rd house of media. So that Saturn retrograde is going to start another ass kicking for mainstream media. It's been getting plenty of those. So that's really good. So yeah, on a big new moon, Saturn's going retrograde. It's getting ready to retrograde back over America's natal moon. Big ass deal. Now that new moon, 2 degrees sidereal Gemini, within 2 degrees, so it's conjunct 2 fixed stars. You've got Polaris, the North Star, which is the guiding star of humanity and of the earth. Very powerful to have a new moon on conjunct with that star. Also conjunct with Betelgeuse. Betelgeuse is a very powerful star. Betelgeuse is in the right armpit of Orion, so it's part of the constellation Orion. Orion is Orion is also Osiris. Jesus was based on Orion and Osiris because they were all, Jesus was he was really just another one of these sacrificed and resurrected gods, just like Osiris. So Orion is holding a club. He's depicted as holding a club. A club is the wand suit, also called clubs in the older tarot decks, but it's a suit of wands in tarot. The suit of wands deals with the common people because all those tarot suits deal with a different social class. So it's like the farmers and the common people, the peasantry. And it's the working class, what we call a working class in the modern world. So, and that fixed star being in the armpit, the muscles you're dealing with like the lat, the pec, the shoulder muscles. It's basically the shoulder of Orion, is Betelgeuse. So it's the muscles that are allowing him to swing that club, to fight the great bear. So you can look at this new moon conjunct with the North Star, Polaris, and Betelgeuse as basically this is we the people, the working class, the ordinary people in this world, we're being guided to fight back against abuse and oppression. And it's like, in this world, even if you're a billionaire, it's like you're owned by a bank. Religions presume to own you. Governments presume to treat you like you work for them, when it's actually the other way around. So this is the people, basically, and I don't advocate violence. And I think it's more metaphorical. It's people taking up arms, not so much in a literal, violent, physical way, but it's about people's minds taking up arms. It's about people being wise to the abusers who have convinced us that there are rulers for these last 2,000 years. The last 2,000 years was a bunch of lies. So it really created a very artificial world and an artificial consciousness. So, and it set the conditions for us to be dominated by money, to be dominated by the intellect rather than just using our intellects as a servant. So yeah, the last 2,000 years was a real dark age. And the religions that rose up within these last 2,000 years were basically mental prisons. Islam, Christianity, the Judaism that we know today, even Buddhism. Buddhism is very good for crowd control. So yeah, that new moon is about the people basically mentally taking up their arms and being wise about how they've been abused and oppressed. And that's everybody. I'm not talking about the media's, the groups that the media tells you are oppressed. This is like everybody, every race, color, tribe on this planet. We're like debt slaves and cannon fodder the way we've been living. So people are going to get wise to this, and they're going to stop complying. A very long period of non-compliance is starting. Now, the lunar mansion that new moon is happening in, it's Prometheus. The Vedic name is Mrigashira, but the Western is Prometheus. Prometheus was a titan who he got sick of seeing the gods of Olympus oppress humanity. And he figuratively stole fire from the gods so that humans could benefit from it. So the fire he stole, there was, this term has been coined by others, but the fire in the minds of men. So again, Prometheus is also Rahu, Loki, Lucifer. He's a trickster. So it's that Luca, it's that flash of brilliance. Prometheus, Lucifer, Loki helps you to have that flash of brilliance so you can become aware. And so that you can stop taking shit off of people, stop taking shit off of your boss, people in your family, people in your church, the globalists, whoever you're taking shit off of. It helps you recognize, yes, I have been taking shit off these people, and two, I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to stop playing their game. I'm going to play my own game. So yeah, it's pretty exciting, really. And then, 21st, we've got Midsummer's Day. And that's when the sun climbs to its highest point. The longest day here in the Northern Hemisphere. And it stays at that highest point for the next 2 days. And then on the 24th of June, it starts moving south again from our point of view in the Northern Hemisphere. So it's, it's winter in the Southern Hemisphere. But here in the Northern Hemisphere, Midsummer's Day, that 24th of June, it's the feast of John the Baptist, La Fête de Jean-Baptiste. It's a big day for fairs and festivals in places like Ireland. It's like the Spancel Hill Festival, the west of Ireland. And then, June 26th, you've got Uranus square Mars. And that could have to do with, storms, earthquakes, natural disasters, things like that. But it's also, Uranus is a disruptor. Uranus is an awakener. Uranus is a rebel. Mars is a warrior. So it's basically people waking up and taking action to improve their lives. And, since Mars is in Cancer the whole month, it's like people getting really emotional and having their emotions stirred. So, yeah. Let's look at a few of these days here, more in focus, a little more nitty gritty. So that June 1st, that Rahu and Jupiter conjunction. So again, Rahu is Loki, Rahu is the dragon's head. Big portal opens up. Now the lunar mansion that happens in, the Vedic name is Ashwini's. Western name is the Dioscuri. The Dioscuri it's a reference to Castor and Pollux, who were two brothers who, one of them, they had the same mother. One was the son of Zeus. One was the son of a mortal man. So the one who was the son of Zeus, he was immortal. He lived in heaven. When the mortal brother died, he was raised to the level of a celestial being. And these two brothers, they were horsemen. They're often depicted, over in like Europe, like in Italy, like around Rome. They're depicted as horsemen, and they were called upon when people were in need. They were called upon for help. And the Ashwinis are the same in the Vedic mythology. So Rahu and Jupiter, they're opening this portal. They want to help us to, ascend to our highest evolution. And it's like they're available to help us, but you have to ask for the guidance. And so that's really cool. So it's like we have all the help in the universe if we can just, we can just ask for it. If we can get out of our own way and realize we don't know everything. June 3rd, today, full moon, 19 Scorpio. So again, in that lunar mansion, Parka, and the Vedic name is Jeshta. So like I said, Jeshta, Parka, most batshit crazy part of Scorpio. Scorpio deals with the unconscious mind. It deals with our deep issues, our deep baggage, our deep wounds that we have to heal and integrate and process. But that particular lunar mansion, that's like the really narcissistic, reactive, paranoid part of Scorpio. People can get really paranoid about little, perceived slights. It may not even be real. And, what is it? 4 degrees away. So not quite conjunct. Fixed stars have orbs of like 2 to 3 degrees. But this full moon is right on the cusp of being conjunct with Antares. So the full moon is at 19 sidereal Scorpio, and then Antares is 15 sidereal Scorpio. So they're pretty close to conjunct. I think Antares is, it's being felt because it is in the same lunar mansion. It is in this lunar mansion of Jeshta, aka Parka. So Antares is the heart of the Scorpion. It's called the Star of War. So it gets people all whipped up and crazy. We're certainly seeing this in Eastern Europe, this war in Ukraine. This war of self-defense being waged by Russia. You've got, the Nazi empire of NATO closing in, and, you've got this Anglo-Protestant American empire closing in on it, which its bankers created the Nazis and the Soviets. So they want to control the world, and they'd love to do a regime change in Russia. Russia's sick of that shit. And basically, they're moving nukes around, into, Belarus just as a bargaining. It's basically a bargaining chip. They're going to put the nukes there so that NATO will make concessions and negotiations. So it's like, don't get wrapped up in your end of the world fantasy, your paranoid fantasy, if you have one. A lot of people do. So, big full moon here. It's like the saber of war being rattled, but it's not gonna be as bad as you think. Nobody wins nuclear wars, and the Russians know this. And, when you look historically, the only people who have made decisions to drop nukes on other countries are Anglo-Saxon and Scots-Irish Protestant Americans during World War II. Dropped 2 nuclear bombs on Japan. The WASPs, the Anglo-Saxons, have always been the dominant tribe in America. And, the Scots-Irish are their attack dogs who prosecute their wars for them. It's been like this in Northern Ireland from what? The 1600s till the present. And it was like this in in Scotland when these lowland Scots who became the Scots-Irish started prosecuting wars for the King of England by, conquering the Highlands for them. And as a reward, they get shafted by getting kicked off their land and sent somewhere else. So, yeah, Russia, in my opinion, Russia's not going to do this. It's Americans, It's mostly American Protestants who decide to drop nukes on people. The Russians have suffered too much to start something like that. Americans act like they saved the world during World War II because, 400,000 people died. America jumps into the war right at, basically right at the end. Russia lost like 30 million people. So they know what suffering is. We're a bunch of friggin' snowflakes. So, yeah, in my opinion, they're not going to start that. June 4th. Interesting day, June 4th. So that's a Sunday here in North America. The markets will open the next day on Monday the 5th. But it's interesting because if you look at the birth chart of the United States of America, the financial axis is comprised of the signs Capricorn and Cancer. So the financial axis, it's the second house to the 8th house. They're opposite houses, so they make an axis. Second house is the money you earn by the sweat of your own brow and or the sweat of your own ingenuity. And just your own hard work, your brains, your brawn, whatever it is. That's the second house. 8th house is institutional money. It's pensions, it's settlements, insurance policies, annuities, all that kind of stuff. And then it's also big institutional money. It's the money flying around in the economy and through the banking system. So there are these two opposite houses that deal with finance. So for United States of America, second house of the money you make, of resources, is Pluto. And really the second house is not so much money, but it's resources. Now the eighth house is more money, because the eighth house is magic. Money is magic. Money is an artificial construct. It doesn't actually exist, but it is actually a very useful idea because it allows people to travel without dragging a bunch of gold around, or, traveling with a herd of cattle or a herd of sheep. So it's a medium, it's a portable means of exchange, especially with, electronic transfers. It's even more portable than it ever was. But it's not really real, it's a symbol. So the eighth house being magic, eighth house is really the house of money. Not so much resources, but, paper money and digital money. Money is evaporating. It's going from liquid to a gas as we speak. So what's up with this financial axis, this axis of resources on the fourth? Well, in America's second house of resources, of Capricorn, the retrograde Pluto is at 5 degrees. And, it's America's Pluto slowly moving towards its return on the 16th of July, 2024, which I call Independence Day 2.0. So you've got that. Opposite in Cancer, the sign of comfort, of freedom. That in Cancer, America's eighth house, is Venus at 5 degrees. So Pluto and Venus are going to be looking at each other. So Venus in Cancer, Venus is all about sensuality. It's all about material comfort and just enjoying every sensual experience that life in the 3D has to offer us. And life in the 3D is a very sought after experience for higher dimensional beings like we are, because you get to feel all this stuff. The 3D is not a prison. It's like an amazing virtual reality experience that's very tactile. So anyway, Venus is the appreciation of that tactility, of that sensuality. Now, Pluto and Venus are going to be looking at each other. So basically, Pluto in that house of resources is looking at Venus in that house of money and magic, of money magic, financial wizardry. Pluto's looking from the house of resources at Venus in the house of financial wizardry and saying, yeah, I know you're having a good time, but I've got some adjustments to make. Pluto's the god of the underworld. Pluto's the soul's journey too. So it's all this shit we don't want to deal with that we have to deal with in order to grow. So Pluto's saying, yeah, I know you're having a great time enjoying that financial wizardry, but we got some things to straighten out. So, I expect we'll see some market drama, but, unless you have a bunch of money riding in the stock market, you're probably not going to give a shit. Not immediately. Like I said, I think there'll be some hiccups. I think that, the housing market's tightening up, but it's not the big one yet. Really, I think this is going to cause foreign money to flee, for example, from Europe to the United States. I think actually more money is going to get invested in America as other places go down, but that's going to be a temporary fix. And you got Mars. Again, you've got Mars and Cancer, and that, for America, that eighth house of financial wizardry. Little sidebar: people are making a big drama about Mars being in Cancer, and they're like, oh, it's going to be all crazy rioting and war and natural disaster. And it's like, well, yeah, there's going to be some of that. But what none of the sensationalists, I'm not going to name any names of astrologers, but what the kind of the sensationalists who can be kind of shallow, what they're not mentioning, even though Mars is in Cancer, you've got Venus in there the whole time. And Venus is so far beyond Mars, so far behind Mars, far enough behind Mars, it's actually not going to catch up. And I want to double check. I know in July, Venus goes retrograde. Yeah, I think Venus is what? Yeah, I'm pretty sure Venus is going to, it's slow. Why I'm thinking about Venus, it's slowing down right now because on July 22nd, it's going to station and then go retrograde that day. And I'm pretty sure it's going to do this in the later degrees of Cancer. So the point is, Venus is slowing down. It's not going to catch Mars, even though Venus is a faster moving planet. So Mars is going to be on to Leo before Venus can even catch up to it. So the point is, Venus and Mars are both in Cancer. So Mars hates being in Cancer, but Venus is in there. Venus is really the only planet that can comfort Mars. You know, Jupiter can kind of control Mars. Saturn can control Mars. Saturn's great at controlling Mars. But Venus can comfort Mars. You know, it's like this sweet woman that can calm down some warrior berserker type who's like raging and having a fit, you know. So I think, you know, by the end of the month, they come their closest. Wait, how many degrees? They're going to come within about, what, like 3 degrees by the end of the month? So they're going to, you know, she's going to get pretty close. Venus is going to get pretty close to Mars. So through the month, Venus is going to be comforting and soothing Mars more and more. Then it moves on to Leo. It's in a fire sign. It's going to have a better disposition. Cancer is a water sign. It's very emotional. Mars hates it. And it can lash out and act like an asshole. But Venus is there to basically soothe and comfort Mars. I'm sure somebody out there is talking about it. I haven't heard anyone. But so, yeah, Venus is helping us too to just keep the drama to a dull roar with Mars. So, you know, I think that'll keep the drama down on whatever financial thing could possibly happen. Now, another thing, well, there's a lot with June 4th here. Another thing about June 4th, it's a conjunction at 26 sidereal Aries of Mercury and Uranus. So Uranus is like a higher form of Mercury. Mercury on its own is the intellect. But Mercury lives within Saturn's domain. Saturn rules the 3D. Saturn is the master of the 3D. It's the most distant visible planet. And so, because of that, you know, when you look at the old Renaissance and medieval spheres of the planets, the artwork where the spheres of the planets would be depicted, where these spheres were concentric with the Earth at the center, Saturn is the outermost sphere, so which means Saturn's in control. Now, Uranus lives beyond the domain of Saturn. Uranus is actually, it's like the 8th sphere. It is the keeper of the gates of paradise. This is where the idea of St. Peter guarding the gates of heaven came from. It's actually Uranus guarding and caretaking the gates of paradise. Uranus lets you in. Uranus judges your worthiness. Now, these spheres of the planets, they're stages of consciousness. So Saturn has a function where it sort of rules conformity. And Saturn forces us to be real with ourselves. Now, if you're not real with yourself to a sufficient degree, Saturn doesn't allow you to go beyond conformity. So it doesn't, you don't go beyond what your church and your parents and your teachers and your boss and your friends and neighbors tell you should be doing. Because you don't know how to be real enough with yourself. You just know how to do monkey see, monkey do. When you get real, when you have a sense of who you are and what you want your life to be like, Saturn's like, good job. You passed the test. You learned your lesson. I'm going to send you to my associate, actually my father. I'm going to send you to my father, Uranus. He's going to help you. You move on to Uranus. Uranus teaches you how to rebel. And rebellion is necessary for growth. So when you reach the consciousness state, the consciousness level of Uranus, the vibration of Uranus, it's when you go, oh, I don't think my parents and my siblings and my co-workers and my boss know everything. And it's when you kind of start doing your own thing. You might have a midlife crisis. And you might just start experimenting with things. People think you're being a weirdo because you're feeling your own life out and figuring out who you want to be. So, that's totally part of the whole Uranus deal. So Uranus is that necessary rebellion that helps us to be authentic and to live our own best, genuine life. So Uranus is that higher form of Mercury. So Mercury's the intellect. So it's that higher form of the intellect that basically tunes us into the infinite. And Uranus is the keeper of the gates to the infinite. So when Mercury conjuncts, and so Uranus is basically the higher self of Mercury. So when Mercury meets its higher self in Aries is your identity. It's yourself. It's what goes on in your head. It's your initiative. It's your action. So when Uranus meets it's in the lunar mansion of Hades, god of the underworld, that makes us deal with our baggage and our emotions on a deeper level. So when Mercury meets its higher self, Uranus, in this place, Mercury is going to start basically shaking things up. They're going to shake things up together. Uranus is going to be the big brother. Because, our higher self is like our big brother, big sister that teaches us how to be our real self, which is who our higher self is. So Uranus is going to help Mercury to shake shit up and be like, who the fuck am I really? What do I really want? I don't want to do what everyone else wants me to do. I want to do my own fucking thing. Mom and dad and my boss and my friends and coworkers can pound fucking sand if they don't like me for who I really am. So this is a day for that. Now, if people are not at this Uranus vibration, then, Antifa or Black Lives Matter or some supremacist group or some church can make them go act like assholes and have a riot and, persecute somebody or, do whatever, or cancel somebody or do whatever the fuck. So, this could be an interesting day where people are like, they could be freaking out about money, but you can change your view of yourself. You're not going to freak out about money so much. You're going to be like, well, I just have to change what I'm doing a little bit and I can get all the resources that I need and maybe all the resources I want if I'm real enough with myself. So, yeah, that June 4th, it's a very interesting day that's kind of like hiding in the month. June 11th, Jupiter's going to go in the shadow. It's going to retrograde on September 4th. But yeah, Jupiter's going to be dealing with shit with retrograde business. It's going to be at what? 10 Aries that day. Where is it going to retrograde to? My notebook has like little appendices. Pain in the ass, but it's worth the time. Where's my retrograde list? Oh, no, I didn't find it yet. But anyway, it's going to stay within Aries. It's not going back to Pisces. It will retrograde back over that 9th degree of Aries where Rahu and Jupiter met. So it's going to be reinforcing. Jupiter is going to be reinforcing that portal that it opened with Rahu on June 1st. And what is it? It's going to be about, I think it's going to be October, November when it goes back over that 9th degree for the first time. And then in December, it's going to go over it for a third time. So that portal is really going to be hammered upon by Jupiter. Jupiter's got some work to do. All right. June 15th, that's the day I mentioned. You got Mars and Uranus parallel. Let me see here. Yeah, but almost square. So again, parallel deals with declination. Declination is a planet's height above the horizon. So planets are usually at different declinations, but for the first time since December 2004, Mars and Uranus, same declination, same height above the horizon, so they're parallel. And they're going to be setting up for a square. And that square, what is that? Doesn't happen until the 26th. Doesn't happen for 9 more days because Mars has to move 5 more degrees and get into position for that perfect square. But they're setting it up. So, you know, that's a square in cardinal signs from Aries to Cancer. So Aries, initiative, fire under the ass, what goes on in your head, your identity. Cancer's the emotions. It's the heart, the chest where we feel emotions. It's comfort, it's freedom. So our emotions about our identity, about our freedom, our comfort are going to be shaken up by having Mars and Uranus look at each other in this square, which will happen later in the month on the 26th. And, squares are not harmonious. They kind of like, they're tense and they get things moving. So yeah, but first time there has been one of these Mars-Uranus parallels since December 2004 with the nodes Rahu and Ketu in the same signs they were in December 2004, only about 2 degrees away. So could be a day for some natural disaster. I hope not, but you never know. June 17th, that's at new moon, 2 degrees, sidereal Gemini, with Saturn going retrograde on the same day, ready to go back eventually within this retrograde to America's natal moon, which is 7 degrees of Aquarius, which is the 3rd house of media. So Saturn's going to fuck up mainstream media again, thank God. So yeah, new moon. So a new moon is a portal because it's like it's the darkening of the moon. Especially with eclipses, but also with new moons. When a luminary like the sun or the moon darkens, it's a portal. So the light of the luminary, so in this case the moon, the mind, we get cut off from the light of the mind. And we're like temporarily not blinded by that light, and we start understanding more what's going on in our minds. So again, 2 degrees, it's conjunct with Polaris, the home of the Sky Father. In every Eurasian tradition, Polaris, the North Star, is the home of the Sky Father, whether you call him Zeus, D, Tyr, Tu, whatever the hell. So the new moon is conjunct the Sky Father in the North Star. And that North Star, again, is the guiding star, the guiding light, the guide of the destiny of the earth and of humanity. And then the star Betelgeuse. So Betelgeuse is, again, it is the right shoulder of Orion, the shoulder he's using to swing that club. Orion's a symbol for, the working class, the common people. It is mostly Martian energy. It's got a little Mercury in it too. So this is where a portal opens for we the people to wake up even more and realize and get that download from the Sky Father who lives in that North Star in Polaris. And because it's also conjunct Betelgeuse, get that will to fight back. So I'm not advocating physical violence. I'm talking more importantly on a mental level where the common people say, you know what, I'm sick of this shit. I'm sick of these parasite classes in politics and in Wall Street. Playing with my life, I'm sick of this parasite class with these NGOs like Bill Gates, Elon Musk, these media companies, these drug companies. I'm sick of these fuckers playing with my life. I'm going to do something about it. It's going to open that portal, and as Saturn goes closer to that natal moon in the third house of media for America's chart, people are going to wake up even more, and more shit's going to come out into the news media. Now, another thing, too, Dr. Stephen Greer, who has briefed 4 presidents about the UFO phenomenon. So we're talking what? Clinton, Bush Jr., Obama, and Trump. He was called, this guy was an ER doctor who started having experiences with higher dimensional beings, aka ETs, started having experiences with these beings, and he got to know hundreds of deep state whistleblowers, people who'd worked in the intelligence services, the aerospace industry, the military, who had all had experiences with UFOs that were documented. He is having, what is it? I think on the 10th and the 11th, he's having a major press conferences in Washington, D.C. He was trying to have events like this back in 2001. They were scheduled for September 11th. He got outshined. I don't need to tell you by what. But, 9/11. 9/11 was really a last-ditch effort. It was a stalling effort. It stalled humanity's awakening for an additional 20 years. I think it caused such a global trauma that I think the Earth attracted the attention of lower dimensional beings that wanted to feed off the Earth. It's like, there's a guy I listen to on YouTube, and he puts it great. He goes, these are beings who can stretch the whole length of a galaxy, but fit within the space, between 2 electrons. So, like lower dimensional beings who have a lot of awareness. People will call them demonic. I think the trauma of 9/11 got their attention, and they fed for the last 20 years. And really the pièce de résistance, the culinary masterpiece of the last 20 years was the scamdemic and all the fear generated by that. And I think they consume the energy of the people who really felt, who made decisions based on that fear. Particularly, I shouldn't say that. I think they fed particularly on the people who got all militant about the scamdemic and the needlecraft, and people who were, saying shit like, well, if you don't want to get needlecrafted, you should just die outside the door of the emergency room because you're going to put people's lives at risk. Those people were fed upon. The politicians were fed upon. It's like, have you noticed how chipper that Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping, the ruler of China, look? Even the rulers of North Korea, they look pretty fucking chipper. And then the politicians of the West just look fucking haggard. Especially Justin Trudeau, the horse whisperer, this Jacinda Ardern, Prime Minister of New Zealand. When she stepped down a few months ago, she looked terrible. Joe Biden, has been death warmed over since the get-go, and he just, fell down on stage at the Air Force Academy graduation. These people look like shit, and I think they were fed upon. So, yeah. And I'm incapable of circling back at this point, but you get the picture. But yeah, this new moon, 2 degrees sidereal Gemini, conjunct in the lunar mansion of Prometheus, the light bringer, the light bearer, the herald of the dawn, the dawning of your awakening, conjunct the North Star, the home of the Sky Father, and Betelgeuse, this martial star, which deals with, victory, martial prowess and victory. This is where the awakening of the people gets another bump up. So pretty awesome. And then, Saturn going retrograde back towards that America's natal moon, again in the house of media, ready to help keep slingshotting that mass awakening upward. June 19th, Venus comes, into the shadow degrees, starting to deal with its retrograde. Cancer, freedom, comfort, all that stuff. And then the last day I'm going to speak at length about, June 26th, Mars lines up to that square with Uranus. Uranus, 27 degrees sidereal Aries, Mars, 27 sidereal Cancer. Uranus in Hades, god of the underworld, that's the lunar mansion. Mars in the lunar mansion of Ashlesha, or Hydra. So, yeah, Hades deals with all these inconvenient realities we don't want to face. Hydra, Ashlesha, that, lunar mansion in Cancer where Mars is, it deals with a persuasive ability, an ability to connect with people on an emotional level and be persuasive. So, this can create a potential for people to basically find some emotional common ground to cooperate. This is also an ability for, mainstream media and deep state to use an emotional common ground to manipulate people. So it just depends where you meet it. But, if you want to get past that stuff, you can find some emotional common ground with people from the other political party or, whatever. And just be adults again and work with people you disagree with and stop fucking canceling people and being, like, insulted by everything. It's like, I heard in some video that, like, the word woman is offensive, supposedly, because it has the word womb in it, because it's like the womb of man. Like, I don't know, that's fucking offensive. That's actually pretty fucking magical, like having the womb of man inside your body. That's a fucking higher dimensional portal where a soul comes through the portal and it attaches through the body, and then the body slides out a portal into the air and starts breathing. It's like, yeah, womb of man, that's pretty fucking magical. But, I understand people have genuine, body dysmorphia and things like that, it has to be dealt with. And if you're a consenting adult and you feel like you need a sex change, go for it. But I think in the mainstream, this whole trans movement, it's pure patriarchy. Especially when you're pushing it on prepubescent children and on minors. It's pure patriarchy, and it's a campaign to destroy women. It's like what you see with women's sports, where you've got some guy who's like 6'2" and like 200 pounds of muscle, and he's competing in women's sports. And if they're contact sports, he's beating the shit out of women. And, even in a sport like swimming, he's often dominating the field because he's a fucking man full of testosterone. It's like, biology is not a conspiracy theory. It's like, you cannot get away from your natural plumbing and your chromosomes. I'm sorry. And I get it. People do have body dysmorphia. And they feel like they're in the wrong body. But you're not the real deal. You know, if you get a sex change, gender reassignment, whatever you call it, you are imitating. You know, you're not the genuine article because you still have the chromosomes, the gender you were born at. So, you know, I'm not going to apologize for that. It's like it's the truth. But, you know, this trans thing, when you get, you know, NGOs backing it, who get, you know, who are worth billions of dollars, and you get, you know, governments behind it and billionaires putting their own personal money behind it. They're destroying women, and they want to destroy gender so that people have, so that they're demoralized. They have no common sense. They don't know left from right, up from down. Being demoralized and disoriented like that, it makes people controllable. It makes people very easy to manipulate. So yeah. So yeah. But yeah, that Uranus Mars square, you know, it's like could be some. It's definitely emotional shakeups because Mars hates it's in Cancer. It's sign of debilitation. Hates being there. It's like it's got all these gooey emotions it hates dealing with. Uranus is looking at it and like shaking it up even more. Uranus is the Earth shaker too. It's like the significator of earthquakes. So yeah, shakeups. But again, Mars is also, like, no one will tell you, like none of the sensationalist astrologers will tell you, Mars is being comforted by Venus, who's the only one who can comfort Mars. So it's not going to be all that bad. So stay away from the news. You know, just scan the headlines. Don't get fucking dragged into that shit. And you know, look at the bright side. Get some hobbies. Enjoy your hobbies. Enjoy, you know, people who are awake, who don't want to get caught up in the drama, and find something fun and, you know, worthwhile to live for. So that's it. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll be with you later. Have a nice one.
Es war